Hello, can you hear me? Okay. So I just wanted to ask, as we have seen here, okay, as we have seen here, that this many data, which is generating per minute basis, does a traditional database system like SQL or Oracle or VB Access or something else is able to handle this per minute data generation for the process? Okay. Any other answer?
I think no.
Okay, great. So definitely not, because definitely not, because the thing is that per minute the data is generating on the higher volume. Second thing, whatever the data you are getting into the internet, correct, it's not always in one type of format. It means we do have the different variety of the data, and these are in large amount of data. Just tell me, when we are posting anything onto a Facebook or anything on the Instagram, we are just having the caption, we are giving the hashtags and all those stuff. Does everything gives in some useful information? Maybe one or two posts is something which is more useful for the peoples around you, and not everything, correct? So finding that data as well is the most important thing. So in the big data, as we have seen about the variety of the data, correct? Now here we do have, in the big data, we do have the three types of data over here. Okay, the one thing is the structured data, another thing is the unstructured data, and third thing is semi-structured data. Now, what is the structured data? Structured data means you should be thinking about the table. It means everything is in the rows and columns format. Or we do have the file formats like CSV or text file format, correct, where the things are separated by the commas. So those are kind for the structured data. Now, when we talk about the unstructured data, then you can think of the post on the Facebooks, emails, your music, and so many different things in which we don't have the structured for the data. Okay. Now, another thing is that the semi-structured data. Now, semi-structured data is what? Have you seen the XML file format? Any of you?
Yeah.
Okay. So that kind of data also we are getting in. So that is kind of data is the semi-structured data. Now, the big data, which is the problem, correct? We do have the Hadoop as their solution. Big data Hadoop as their solution. So in that, we can process this all types of data over there. Okay. Now, when we are talking about the big data, correct, there are the different ways which is defining the characteristic of the big data. The one thing is the volume. Now, the name itself, it related to the size, which is enormous, correct? The size of data plays the very crucial role in determining the value out of it. Also, whether the particular data is actually can be considered as big data or not is depend upon the volume of the data. Okay, so when the data which is in the terabytes, maybe it's tables or files, or it is distributed, no matter what, the first characteristic of the big data is the volume. Now we do have the variety. Now we have seen that data in the which is generating under the big data as a term, correct? It may have the different formats, correct? It means variety refers the heterogeneous sources of the nature of data, both structured and unstructured. During the earlier days, spreadsheet and the database was the only source of the data to be considered, correct? But nowadays, the email, photos, videos, the monitoring devices, PDFs, audios are also considered as the type of data, which is coming under the unstructured, structured data, and semi-structured data as well. Okay. Now, another thing, we do have the velocity. Now, velocity is the term which refers the speed of the generation of data. It means we have seen there, correct, per minute how Facebook, the social media handles are generating the data. It means how fast data is generated and processed to meet the demands determines the real potential in the data. Now, big data velocity deals with the speed at which the data flows in from the sources like a business process and the application log. Are you getting these 3 points? What is the volume? What is variety? What is velocity?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay, great.
yes.
Now, thank you. Now, another thing is the veracity. Okay. Now, we have seen about, let's take any example of the political condition. Okay. So, for one political condition, everybody is raising their views on the social media. But what is the authenticity of that particular post, whether that thing is correct or whether that thing is wrong, or what is the trustworthiness of data, that is also should be accountable, correct? So that is another part of the big data, which is the veracity. It means whatever the data we are taking in, it should be trustworthy, it should be authenticate. We know the origin and what is the value for that particular data, and whatever the data we are getting in, it should have the availability and the accountability as well. Okay. And the last V is the value. It means whatever the data we have consumed, correct? Now we have the data, what should we do with that? We should make use of that data to create something, or to make analysis on it and give it to the business to have something in it, correct? So they can take their decisions for their further sales, or further what do we call, for the line of things to achieve their targeted goals and all those stuff. So that data should have the enough of value. Okay. Okay. Now, one thing as well. Now, before moving on, I just want to talk about the advantages of processing the big data. Now, why are we using the big data? First thing, business can utilize outside the intelligence while taking the decisions. Okay, so let's just consider that you are the shop owner, okay, and you have some specific jobs, and customers are visiting you. They are providing, let's suppose you have created the Google page or Instagram handle or Facebook handle for your particular business. So everybody is coming in, they are providing their views on it. So you may share that with some peoples, or you may brand them to make use increase in your sales, correct? So when you are using that, so what it is benefiting you, and what is the one thing that you need to be sure of, that I need to be assured of whatever the data I'm spending in, or whatever the data which is being posted on my particular handle, it should be correct. Okay, now what is this data which is getting generated on this handles or any particular Google page? The one thing, you know what is the response of your customer for you, correct? Another thing, what is the areas where you can improve? Third thing, what is the thing which is best in your business, or you can say what is the UPA in your business, the unique thing which is potential enough to make a grow your business. Third thing, the identification of the risk, whether if one of your product is not being good enough to be sold in the market, or which is the product which is good enough to make you stay in the flow. And better operational efficiencies, correct? One thing we need to be sure on, it's like whatever data, it means suppose we may have seen these cases, like the peoples are not visiting somewhere, but they are providing their views on that particular let's see hotel or anything, correct? We should be known enough, like if that particular person is giving you a view on your business, that is a customer of you, or it is just not useful post. So those things also you need to be in taken care, whether the data is trustworthy. If the data is trustworthy, what should be my further alignment of the things to do? Okay, is it understood? How can we make use of big data? With just a small example of being the any product or being any business person. Can you type yes or no in the chat?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Now, one thing, as we have seen the big data as our problem, correct? The data is generating vastly. There is a variety of it. We should know what is the trustworthy data and all those stuff. So the Hadoop is the solution for that our problem. So how it is been, so we can see that. Let me go here. Okay. Before that, this introduction and all, we all know like dog cutting has created the Hadoop, and the Hadoop is the open source framework. Now, open source means what? We don't need to pay for it, for storage and the large scale processing of the data set on the cluster of commodity hardware. Commodity hardware, it means the cheap hardware. It means with the cheap hardwares, you can make use of the big this Hadoop framework to processing and the storing of your data. Okay. Now, this is a particular ecosystem of our Hadoop thing. Okay. We do have the different services known as Scoop, Flume. We do have Zookeeper, HDFS, Yarn. There are so many here, Hive, Pig, HBase, and now each of this service is working very differently to let the big data process, whether it's with external source, whether it's with Hadoop, or whether the data is into a different formats. Okay, so while knowing about the Hadoop, we should know about the Hadoop common things. Okay, it contains the libraries and utilize needed by the Hadoop. Now these are the things. The HDFS, in the diagram we have seen the HDFS over here, correct? Now what is the HDFS? HDFS is, okay, just a moment, let me reshare it again. Is it visible now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, when we are talking about the HDFS, correct, this particular term, it means the Hadoop is the framework, correct? On this, we do have the distributed file system that stores the data on the commodity machines. Commodity machines means, we know, we have seen the cheap machines providing the very high aggregated bandwidth across the cluster. Sorry. Now, across the cluster. Now, with the name itself, we know that this is a very distributed file system. It means if you have one particular MB of file, that will be distributed across the cluster. It is not something like that is will be stored on the one particular location. It will be distributed across the cluster. Now we do have another service as Yarn. Now what is a Yarn? Yarn is the resource management platform which is responsible for managing the computer across in the cluster and using them for scheduling of user application. Now we have seen this one particular service. This is particularly for the storage purpose. Now there should be something which can be efficiently allows the processing of the big data, correct, with the scheduling of it. Then Yarn is kind of a resource management tool which is allowing the computer resources in the cluster to efficiently perform their operation or schedule their applications. I'm sorry. Now, another thing, we do have the MapReduce, which is kind of a programming model for large scale processing of the data. It means you can write down the Java program to process out the things in the Hadoop as well. Now, why we are using the Hadoop? Basic distributed computing, it means we have seen over here, it's like the data is being distributed, and when we are working with the distributed data, our performance is ultimately getting improved. Another thing is the parallel processing. So whenever we are providing anything to the server to execute, correct, those things are carried out by the parallel processing. Another thing is like we can have this things on the command of the hardwares. It means we don't need to go for some expensive hardware to store of this data. Another thing is the low latency. It means whenever we are working with the big data, correct, the performance is always better than any other traditional system. Another thing is that the data availability. Now, whatever the data is being stored in the Hadoop, correct, it has the replication factor. Now, that replication factor, you can also have it, but initially it is 3. you can make change on it, but initially whenever you are working with any Hadoop system, the data availability or the replication factor of each thing is 3. It means suppose you have 1 MB of file present in the Hadoop cluster, correct? It is creating another 2 copies to be saved in different systems or different system on the cluster to have the availability of the data. So just in case if any of the file failure is happen, it can go back to their backup and make use of that particular thing. Now another thing is the fault tolerant. Now why the fault tolerant? I'll explain the architecture of the of how the things are happening in the big data, okay? But whenever something is failing, they always have the backup for it. That is the reason the Hadoop is the fault tolerant. Is it clear till this point?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you explain me once low latency means?
Low, what you know, we are defining the low latency term when the computer network is optimized to process the high volume of the data with the minimal delay. Are you getting my point, or should I tweak the statement?
Yeah, I am getting it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Now the Hadoop architecture. Okay. We have seen the HDFS layer as our storage layer and the MapReduce as a processing layer, correct? So how the things are being executed in the Hadoop. We'll see this in the 5 minutes. Okay. So when we are talking about the storage layer, okay, then in this we do have the name node and we do have the multiple data nodes. It means this HDFS layer is carrying the server master slave architecture. If you know what is a master and slave, okay, master and slave means what? The name node is the master and the data nodes are the slave. It means the name node is particularly giving the information or the direction to each data node that what needs to be done or what data they should keep in it. Okay, now what is a name node? Now in the data node specifically, we are storing the data in the distributed manner, correct? But name node is having all the information about the data nodes, like what is the memory present over there, how much memory they have used already, what all are the things or what data is being saved in my data nodes, what is the capacity of each data node to efficiently process the data, and all those stuff. So name node is kind of a master which has all the metadata information about their servers, which are the data nodes. Okay, another thing is that we have the map reduce layer, which is for the processing. Now for the processing stuff, we do have the master slave architecture only. The master over here is the job tracker and the slave over here is the task tracker. Now here, if we know about this, like task trackers are the nodes which are kind of a thing which is carrying out the exact execution of the application which are submitted by the user. But job tracker is the server or is the service which is tracking all the task trackers whether they are working fine, how many data they are working with, what are the time taken by the each task tracker to execute the data, and all the related information to it. Okay, is it clear?
Yes.
Now we do have the versions of Hadoop. In 1.0, we are using the HDFS alongside the MapReduce, but nowadays people don't really write the large programs to execute anything on the Hadoop. So nowadays we are having the Hadoop 2.0, in which we do have the HDF, which is the storage layer. We do have Yarn as the resource management. We do have the MapReduce for the data processing, but writing a program in MapReduce is not happening now because there are multiple services which are supporting this particular service. So we can just write anything into SQL or simple Python program or the Scala programs with different services. Okay, and we do have the another data processing services as well. So I'll okay. We'll just see the introductions today. So I'll explain you about the data engineering. So when we know about the big data and all this stuff, correct? So there is a concept which can we make use of while working with the data with the use of Hadoop as a framework. We will be using the data engineering. Now, what is the data engineering? The data engineers design and build the pipelines that transform and transport the data into format wherein by the time it reaches to the data scientist or other users, it highly usable state. It means now we do have the Hadoop as our framework, correct? Now the thing is that we have the data, like as part of data engineers, what is our responsibility? We take the data, we cleanse out the data, we are giving only useful data to the user so they can make use of that information to create something out of it, or they can use their data to make some decisions on it. Now this pipeline must take the data from many disparate sources and collect them into single warehouse that represents the data uniformly as the single source of truth. It means whatever the different sources we are getting the data into, correct, we are cleaning them, we are storing them, we are transforming them according to the user's need, and then we are storing them into our system. So if any particular person or any particular user is coming, so they can just see one source of data as part of their investigation or as part of their requirement. Okay, now we do have some concepts over here: data warehouse, data marts. So if I talk about the data warehouse, it's like you will have the information, all the information being stored in the data warehouse, where you can't change anything over there, but you will have all the information present over there. Let's suppose the human counting of each nation which is present over there, correct? So we do have one data mart for the Indian population, we do have one data mart for the American population, and different stuff. So particularly one data warehouse is storing one kind of object of data. Now here we are storing, let's suppose we are storing the population's data, correct? So it will have the different data marts according to the each nation's how much people are there, what is the age, and everything when we are giving the information about the population present over there. Okay, so now what is a data warehouse over here? So data warehouse is the relational database that designed for the query and analysis rather than transaction processing. It includes the historical data derived from the transaction from single and multiple sources. Okay. Again, the data warehouse provides the integrated, enterprise-wide and historical data, which is focusing on the decision making and data modeling for the analysis. It means the data warehouse you can use only for analysis purpose and not for the transaction purpose. Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
I don't see any screen that's been shared.
Is it?
Just the audio I can hear.
Okay, let me share it back.
Thank you. I
Is
can
it
see it
now?
now.
Okay, great. Now we do have some features about the data warehouse that is subject oriented, as we have took the example about the population. It has the time variant, it is non-volatile, and it is integrated enough. Okay. Now with the time, no matter what data is being increased, it can be stored into that particular warehouse. It is non-volatile and integrated enough. It means whatever the information you are getting there, it is in integration of whatever the exact source of information we do have with us. Okay. Now, what is the goal for data warehousing? To help the reporting as well as analysis, to maintain the organization, historical information as well, and be the foundation of the decision making system. Have you any know of any of data warehouse systems? Hello.
No idea.
Okay. Okay, in the Hadoop, we do have Hive as the data warehouse as the service. Okay, so we'll in the course you can see in the detail what is it. Okay, just a moment. One last part which I just wanted to share with. Now we have seen about the introduction of big data, we have seen about the Hadoop, and we have seen about the warehouse systems, correct? Now, as part of being big data engineer or data engineer, what we need to do into our day-to-day life. Okay. So this is a one particular thing which is summarizing all this stuff. Okay. So the collection, it means we have to collect the data from the different sources. Now, it can be any database system, it can be any file system, or it can be any flat files, whether it's structured, whether it's unstructured, or whether it is semi-structured. Okay. So after the collection of data, we need to ingest that data into our system. Okay. So when we are ingesting that particular data into our system, it is calling the staging layer, in which we are keeping the data as what we have received from the sources. We are not making any changes in it. Okay. So once we have the data, we are doing the preparations on it. Okay. Now, what is the preparations? Preparations means whatever the data we have got, we need to cleanse it. We need to perform some operation on it, so we can make them useful for some transformation. It means we are making the data valuable enough to be used for. Okay. Once we prepare that data and we use for computation. Now computation means what? Let's suppose we do have the business, and business has their own requirements that I want this particular reports, I want this particular reports out of your data. So we can make those computation on the data which we have cleansed and which is the transform. We can create that, or we can compute that through this, and we can make them represent using any representation tool. So we do have the different tools over there. So we also make use of this. Okay. Is it understood with this diagram? What is our day-to-day life? It means there are every technical term that we need to look in the course. So this is just I'm explaining you beforehand, like what are we doing as part of being data engineers. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, clear.
Okay. So any questions do you have for me?
What exactly you're doing in the preparation? Can you explain? You told some operations. What does it mean?
Okay. The preparations. Okay. Now each thing is differs with the business requirement. Okay. Now if I can give you one example out of it. So we are getting the data from different sources for different countries. Now
Hey, we lost your screen. Can you share your screen and just give me small example so that we'll understand?
I am not sharing any screen. I'm just verbally explaining it. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. So as I was saying that we are getting the data from one source, which is a PostgreSQL. Okay. So from that, we are getting the sales data for one country with the different cities. Okay. So we are just keeping that whole data as it is in our ingestion layer, which I have told you as the staging layer. Okay. Now another thing is like the sales report, correct? Now what transformations are we performing in for the preparation of the data? So many of you may know that whenever we are receiving the data from source, correct, it may have the special characters, it may have some spaces, it may have some data issues as well, correct? So those kind of checks and cleansing stuff we are doing into a preparation. So we are applying some rules which it should pass, so we can store that data in one form that can be useful for the business. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. You mean just it's a kind of a transformation that you're doing?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it for you to share the presentation? Okay, I'll share the presentation with Satish. Anything else?
Just to confirm, it's a kind of a ETL process that you're explaining here. Extraction, kind of a transformation and load.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other question before we wind up?
No, I'm good.
Thank you. Okay, then I'll share this presentation with Satish, so you can have a look on. Okay. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.